Hi everyone, I am here with a true story for you guys. These are mostly told by hospice nurses about their patients that they've had. Amazing stories of life after death, true accounts of angelic afterlife and divine encounters. Alright, this story here is a little bit longer, so bear with me. Okay, the Bible verse before it is Acts chapter 4 verse 12, which says, "And there is salvation in and through no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among men, and in which we must be saved." Jesus Christ. And this story is called The Cage. 4 weeks I had dreaded this day. I paused outside the room of a patient in the intensive care burn unit. She had tried to kill herself 8 months before by driving head-on into a tractor trailer, into a semi. As the new nurse on the floor, I knew at some point the night shift charge nurse would assign me to care for Cassie. 3rd-degree burns covered 90% of her body. Most people who have injuries this severe typically don't survive. Cassie endured multiple surgeries in an attempt to graft some skin to her raw muscles. Deadly infections postponed scheduled surgeries numerous times. Now an invalid, she depended on others for her every need. Each time anyone attempted to turn her or clean her wounds, she cried out in pain. I don't know why they don't give those burn patients that drug to, knock them out, like for the colonoscopy and stuff. They say you don't really go out all the way, but you don't remember it. I never remember it. Something like that, because they are in excruciating pain when they gotta clean them wounds. I've heard their screams. Yet Cassie hung on for a reason we couldn't comprehend. God said it wasn't her time. If it ain't your time, you're not going to go. And I would be the one to find out why. I learned from the other nurses that at the time of her wreck, Cassie was a 28-year-old wife and mother of 3. She teetered on the edge of despair after losing her job as a secretary and hearing her husband confess to an affair and then ask for a divorce. Alcohol and antidepressants became her best friends. She lost the mental and physical energy to care for her children. When she finally decided her life wasn't worth living, she walked to the bathroom sink, took a handful of antidepressants, and washed them down with a long drink of vodka. Tears streaming down her face, she grabbed the keys to her Honda Civic and walked out the door. A short time later, she raced down a nearby 2-lane road, impatient with the driver in front of her. Cassie swung into the opposite lane to pass. Through tear-filled eyes, she saw an 18-wheeler, a semi, bearing down on her. It's now or never, she thought, as she mentally replayed the last argument she had with her husband. She sobbed, pulled in a quick breath, and fury raging deep in her soul accelerated. Cassie tried to focus. When the fog in her mind cleared, she realized she was in a cage and not alone. An indeterminable number of hideous creatures swarmed around her, tormenting, pointing, and laughing at her. Feelings of being lost, bewildered, and alone swirled in her mind like ingredients in a blender. The team of nurses caring for her felt Cassie would have been better off had she not survived the crash, but she did. At the scene, paramedics revived her despite her horrific condition, and now she lay badly burned in the room behind the glass door in front of me, 2 states away from her home, family and friends, with a secret that tormented her daily. I gathered my courage, said a little prayer, and walked through the door. "Hi, Cassie," I said, still trying to gather more courage to face her. "My name is Liz. I'll be taking care of you today." She looked at me with a level of pain that broke my heart. In all my years of nursing, I've never seen so much fear and terror in one person's eyes. Patients in her condition value and need the stability of being cared for by the same person day in and day out. Changing personnel often causes a brief time of anxiety or panic. I sensed her apprehension that day and feared a new nurse might be too much for her to handle. I was having trouble myself. The sight of her was almost too much for me to handle. I wanted to run. Her body stiff from the neck down. She could move only her upper extremities, neck, mouth, and eyes. Her upper extremities looked more skeletal than human. Paper-thin, scarred skin stretched to cover her arms, hands, and fingers like lacy material grafted together from multiple operations. I couldn't imagine having the will to live in such a horrible condition. It struck me as odd she didn't have a DNR, do not resuscitate order, particularly since she had tried to take her own life. Now I regretted taking the travel assignment. What was I thinking? I had never wanted to work in the burn unit, yet here I was, standing near a patient in worse shape than anyone I'd ever seen. I wanted to cancel this assignment and deal with the loss, but I couldn't because of the hardship it would cause my family. I felt like a sacrificial lamb. Trying to mask my own pain of seeing Cassie for the first time, I systematically accessed her intravenous fluids and the central line used for her IV medications. In the right side of her chest, as I continued my assessment, she flapped her arms in a dramatic fashion. When she caught my full attention, she mouthed 3 words that I couldn't quite make out because of the tracheotomy in her throat. "What?" I asked, my pulse quickening. I was not only dealing with the assignment to care for a person in this shape, but also with the frustration of not being able to communicate with her. With the fear and anxiety in her eyes escalating, she mouthed the 3 words again. Frustrated, I said, "I can't understand, Cassie." She pointed to a pad and pencil. I retrieved both and placed them in her left hand as she lay with her head elevated about 30 degrees. With all her strength, Cassie took the pad and pencil and scribbled, "I can't breathe." As soon as she finished writing, she stopped breathing. I was terrified. My mind locked up. I stared at her for a moment as I tried to get the gears in my head to start working again. Then it clicked. I knew what to do. I called out, my voice barely above a whisper, "I need help in here." This was rapidly becoming more than I could handle. For one thing, I'd never been responsible for anyone in such a horrible condition. I also feared the usual staff in the unit might think I was unreliable because I hadn't noticed what Cassie was trying to tell me. Then I pushed the call bell. When no one answered, not surprising, it dawned on me the rest of the staff might have been burnt out from caring for Cassie. As I mentioned before, she was a difficult case, and I found out later that Cassie pushed the button for assistance a lot each day. I worked in a nursing home, and I know how they do people with the call buttons. It's not right. If I had been thinking clearly, I would have pushed the code button. That's the button we push for immediate help. Desperate, I walked to the unit doorway and gasped again, "I need help in here." At last, the charge nurse, not realizing the gravity of the situation, wandered into Cassie's room. She immediately grabbed the breathing bag, ambu bag, from the hanger on the wall and began resuscitating Cassie and called for more help. An ambu bag provides ventilation to a patient who is not breathing or is struggling to breathe. The device is an essential part of our crash cart. It took 4 of us, the charge nurse, a nursing assistant, respiratory therapist, and me, to save Cassie. We also put her back on the breathing machine, considered somewhat of a setback after the staff had attempted to wean her off it. But I had a greater concern and burden, the condition of her soul. 9 years earlier, I wasted the opportunity to share the gospel with a patient, Mr. Smith, see chapter 1. We've already read that. I never wanted to make that mistake again. What if she died and I didn't know if she knew Jesus? I couldn't bear the thought. It took us about 15 minutes to get Cassie stabilized. Within a few more minutes, she could communicate with me again. When I was sure she could think clearly, I asked if she believed in Jesus Christ. She told me no, and that she didn't know much about religion, although she'd grown up in a Catholic school. She said she had never read any of the Bible and knew very little about Jesus Christ. I told her Jesus died on the cross for her sins and rose again on the 3rd day so she would be free and go to heaven when her time came to die. I asked if she wanted to know him. A happy river of tears streamed down her scared face as she nodded. Then along with me, she mouthed a prayer of salvation. As she completed the prayer, Cassie indicated she wanted to tell me something, but was afraid I might question her sanity. To this day, I'm not sure why she chose me. Though she never spoke again after the wreck, she was able to share her story by writing answers to my questions. I didn't have much time, probably less than 5 minutes, because I had to care for another patient. When I assured Cassie I wouldn't doubt her sanity or the validity of the story, she began writing it out. Now, I understood why she refused to die. She lived in constant fear of going back to the cage. She should die again. She fought every day to stay alive in the hope of finding a remedy, peace, or deliverance. Because of her injuries, Cassie couldn't explain the details of her ordeal. It didn't matter. The Bible describes hell in ways that help me imagine her fear, and the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no respite, no pause, no intermission, no rest, no peace, day or night. Revelation 14:11. When she was in that wreck, she started seeing demons and stuff. She was in hell for a time. I've heard other stories where people have went to hell, and Jesus pulled them out and gave them a second chance with near-death experiences. This was even a guy that was satanic and did horrible, horrible things. He worshipped Satan, and he went to hell, and Jesus gave him a second chance. He changed. He changed. A lot of people won't believe it. They'll say, oh, that was just their brain not getting oxygen or whatever, whatever. It's true. Trust me, it's true. But nobody ever believes it unless they experience it themselves, but it's the truth. No wonder Cassie was so determined to stay alive, despite the severity of her wounds. In his book, 23 Minutes in Hell, Bill Wise describes the horrific torture of eternal damnation. At 3 a.m. on November 23, 1998, he was hurled into the air and landed in what appeared to be a prison cell. Like others who have had similar experiences, he describes the experience in gruesome detail. I saw gruesome because he was in hell. The torture he suffered far exceeded anything he ever experienced on earth. Since he returned from that experience, he has made it his mission to educate people on the horrendous life of eternity without Christ. After sharing her experience in the cage, she was in a cell too. Cassie's conscience changed. When I cared for her, she always asked me to read from the Bible. Her favorite verse was Isaiah 40:31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Although her physical body was still miserable, her spirit had changed. As shown in Acts 4 passage, Peter proclaimed to the high priests and elders that the power and authority of Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation. There is no other. Cassie had a first-hand experience of this truth the day she decided to drive into that 18-wheeler because she didn't understand the salvation Jesus had for her and had not known him. Her soul experienced unfathomable torture when she died. For the soul without Jesus, worse things than death await. Remember the story about the rich man and Lazarus from Luke 16:19-31? Remember the rich guy and the poor man that sat outside his gate begging for crumbs? And the guy wouldn't never help him. The rich man enjoyed his life here on earth, and the beggar Lazarus suffered inconsolably. The rich man died and left us with an eyewitness account of the torment one experiences in hell. Tortured by the flames, the rich man lifted up his eyes one day and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus at his bosom. The rich man cried out for pity and mercy, but none came. He asked Abraham to let Lazarus dip the tip of his finger in water to cool his tongue. But Abraham said, "Between us and you, a great chasm has been fixed, in order that those who want to pass from this place to you may not be able." Despite persistent begging, even for a warning for his 5 brothers, "Please let my brothers know about this place so they don't come here," the rich man didn't get his wish. Like I told you guys, Jesus will say, "I do not know you." No matter how much begging you do, then it's too late. He missed out. God gives us plenty of chances, and apparently the rich man passed them all up. Cassie, on the other hand, made the most of her chance. She survived a massive explosion solely by the grace of God. After her life after death experience, she refused to die again. Terrified of the realm of the dead, she was determined to live in her mangled body. She never felt the painful impact of the crash, never felt the intense flames of the explosion, and never smelled the blood being spilled or the stench of flesh being burned. What she did feel was the pain of confinement. She immediately found herself imprisoned in an old cage, tortured by hideous creatures. These were demons assigned to torture her for eternity. Cassie suffered physically and spiritually through many months, long months. We changed her bandages twice a day. She couldn't lie in the same position for long periods of time. She didn't come easily. She didn't sleep easily. But the worst suffering by far was the torment of slipping into an eternal hell. Still, Cassie got a second chance. She finally found the peace for which she longed. 2 weeks later, Cassie gave up the fight. She chose eternity with Jesus instead of a life of constant suffering. She let go. But this time she won't be with the demons. She'll be in paradise with Jesus and God. It's never too late for us to give our life to the Lord. As He did with Cassie, Jesus can heal us. Many people are afraid to confess their sins because they feel they've committed far more than the Lord is willing to forgive. But the truth is, He forgives it all. We shouldn't allow fear to keep us from seeking salvation. Death will be worse than living if we do not know Jesus as our Savior. No matter how difficult things are, we can find hope in Jesus. Though our flesh, the outer, may die, our spirits live on forever in eternity if we are committed to following the ways and teachings of Jesus Christ. Amen. I was hoping we'd have a near-death experience story like that for you guys. You can look them up on YouTube and watch videos. Even the satanic guy I was talking about, that's where I seen his story, on YouTube. Trust me, it scares you to death when you see that. And it's more real than anything. It seems more real than real life. That's how real it is. It's realer than real life. It's hard to explain, but nobody ever really believes it unless they experience it themselves. But you don't want to experience it yourself. Trust me. It's a horrible, horrible, scary thing. But some people need to see it like she did. And God gave her the second chance just so she can come to Him and be saved and then die. And not be with the demons, but be with Him in paradise. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Let's bring those souls to Jesus, and I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Good night, guys.